Hello and welcome to Matt Loves Eurovision. This is my Eurovision 2025 early February update. Well, we're in the thick of the national final season at the moment, and we've also had a kind of a big week in the Eurovision calendar with the semi-final draw. It was also kind of the official handing over from Malmo to Basel, and so there was an event in Basel to mark the semi-final draw and the handing over, and in some ways it's kind of the official start of Basel's hosting of the contest, although of course the team in Basel have been working for months and months and months. But we will begin with kind of a look through kind of what's been going on in the national finals and also kind of artist announcements. And it is with the artist announcements that we will start. And we had two artist announcements this week, both taking place on Thursday. The first of those came very early in the morning from Austria, and their artist, internally selected, is JJ. Now, JJ's full name is actually Johannes Pietsch. He will be singing a song called Wasted Love, and one of the writers or co-writers of that is no other than Taya of Taya and Selena fame. She actually has another song that's currently in the Maltese final, or the Maltese selection as well. So who knows, she might end up with more than one song at the contest. The other artist announcement that was made on Thursday, although this wasn't expected, hadn't been pre-announced anyway, is actually a Big Five announcement. It's from Luan, who will be the representative for France at this year's contest. She's a singer, she's an actress. I think she was a semi-finalist in France's The Voice, and she's also won a César around sort of 10, 11 years ago as well, in terms of her from the acting side. Also taking place on Thursday is we had our first of the national finals of this week. Well, the first final. We did have two semi-finals take place in the week as well for Spain. But we had the full national final for Greece on Thursday. It's their first national final they've had in almost a decade or so. It all came down really to the two favourites, or the two pre-show favourites, and the winner was Claudia with her song Asteramata. We don't know the breakdown of the scores yet. It was both by an international and Greek jury and also public vote, but we haven't got any sort of details yet of how the voting went down, or certainly not at the time of recording this. Now, before we move on to the first Super Saturday that we've had of the season, do please remember to like and subscribe, and obviously comment and share below as well, and ring the notification bell if you want to be notified of updates to the channel. And there will be quite a few updates coming in the coming weeks, obviously. But on Saturday we had three national finals, but we also had three semi-finals, or kind of prior rounds of national selections. And they were in Lithuania. The semi-finals continued. We also had Latvia, who had a very large semi-final, which basically took all of their entries that they have and whittled those down to 10. And of course we have Melodifestivalen, which is the Swedish national selection, had their first semi-final, their first heat of this season of their contest, and that included a previous Eurovision entrant, John Lundvik, and he has got through to the final. So we may yet see him in Basel, but he will be competing in the Melfest final in a few weeks' time. Slightly changed format in Melfest. They normally have two people going direct to the final, and then two artists going through to a kind of Andra Chansen or a second chances round. This time though, that only one artist is going through to the Andra Chansen, or in fact it's called something different now. It's not Andra Chansen, but it's the same principle. That two to the final and one to the the playoff round as well, and then the other artists, the other three, don't go anywhere. And then we've got our three finalists, or the three national finals, where we have three new songs. The first of those to conclude on the night was in Belgium. That was a Euro song. 8 artists competed there. In the end, The favourite won by an absolute landslide, both by the jury and even more so by the televote, and that was Red Sebastian and his song Strobe Lights. And then we went over to Slovenia and their national final, EMA. Slightly different format. The artists were voted for by a jury rather than a public vote. So they all performed live, but it was a jury vote that took place, and just the top two went through to a public vote semi-final. And there the favourite did not win, but the artist winning was Clemen, and How Much Time Do We Have Left will be their song. And then we finished with Spain. Benidorm Fest. Now they'd had two semi-finals, so they'd gone from 8 songs in each semi-final down to 4 went through from each semi-final through to the final. And who was the favourite changed during the week from La Chispa to the person that did win it in the end, which was Melody with her song Esa Diva. Now Melody has been in the Spanish national final before. It wasn't called Benidorm Fest at the time she was in, but she finished second. In fact, it was joint first, with Soraya, who won with La Noche Es Para Mí, but she had won. Soraya had won had got a bigger televote, and therefore she went through. So Melody finally gets her chance to go to Eurovision, and obviously, being Spain, guaranteed place in the final. Now on to the other big thing that happened this week for Eurovision, which of course was the handing over from Malmo to Basel, and the little ceremony they had, the sort of televised ceremony they had on streamed live on YouTube. But the main focus of that was really to do the sort out who was performing in which semi-final. It used to be called the semi-final allocation draw. It is now just called the semi-final draw. But I think you often find myself and many other Eurovision fans and Eurovision YouTubers still refer to it as the semi-final allocation draw, but it is now the semi-final draw. But this is really to put all the countries that compete in the semi-finals, which is all of the countries barring the Big Five plus the host nation, which is Switzerland in this case, and they are drawn from pots of clusters of countries that have tended to vote for each other, or more likely to vote for each other. So, for example, you get the Scandinavian countries plus Australia all sitting in one pot, and it's really to try and split them up as much as possible across the two semi-finals, and trying to make things as fair as possible. But also the semi-final draw also puts them into which half of the semi-final they're in. Now this, although it's not, if you're in the first half, that doesn't mean that you're not going to get through, but statistically second half tends to be slightly more favoured in terms of qualification chances. It's more like 60% of songs from the second halves qualify over 40% of the first halves, particularly when it comes to on the televote side. Now you see on screen, or should see on screen now, kind of how the semi-finals have split. Obviously there is a slight difference in numbers because, as I alluded to in my last update, we thought Moldova was withdrawing. They had announced their withdrawal, and indeed that was confirmed by the EBU, and with the semi-final draw, that is doubly confirmed now that we have no Moldova, which means we have fewer songs in that first semi-final. And I think that may be a relief to some of the countries in the semi-final, that there aren't as many countries, therefore fewer countries don't qualify from there. However, because we have two of the great powerhouses of Eurovision, or the modern Eurovision, sitting in that semi-final, which of course is Sweden, which has qualified every year apart from 1 year, and even then, if they had been on televote only, they would have qualified, and also Ukraine, who have always qualified for every final. So they're almost like, not necessarily that Sweden and Ukraine will definitely qualify again, but it almost feels like 2 spots already taken with that. So I think the fact that there are fewer countries in that semi-final will probably please the countries at least having some small recompense for having to be in the same semi-final as Ukraine and Sweden. Interestingly enough, I think there are in the second half of that semi-final, There are a couple of countries there who I think will be quite pleased to be in the second half of that smaller semi-final. San Marino being one. They really struggle to qualify. They don't have many voting partners, obviously a very small country. So their chances are enhanced a bit more by being in that second half. And also they have Italy voting in this semi-final, because that's the other thing that happens, is they decide which of the semi-finals the big five and host nation will vote in. And in this particular case, in semi-final one, it will be Italy, Switzerland and Spain voting. It's also probably a read for Portugal as well, in terms of having Spain there. In the second semi-final, I think obviously there are slightly more countries. Israel is probably the country that is almost certain to qualify at the moment, with almost certainly to get through. But the other ones, you've got some strong contenders in terms of qualification history there, but it's not quite as, I'm not sure it's necessarily as clear cut as though that they would all automatically qualify. Interestingly enough, and I think people like Israel, Ireland and Australia, and perhaps even Latvia, Lithuania, Malta will all be very pleased, because they have the UK voting in this semi-final, and the UK tends to give Televate points to those countries. Not always lots of points, but they tend to more reliably go to those countries, particularly kind of Ireland and Lithuania, as it happens. Also, Ireland tends to vote for Latvia and Lithuania as well, so I think they will, and obviously Latvia and Lithuania vote for each other as well. So I think there's quite a little cluster of countries there that will just give them a little boost, even if it doesn't necessarily mean that they qualify. At the moment, it's interesting to see where things are, but obviously we have so few countries with their songs announced yet, and this doesn't show the running order yet. That comes much later, and I think that gives us a much bigger hint of where we see countries perhaps squished between big favourites, or maybe where a country has a chance to shine because it's standing out in terms of genre. So all of that is still to come. And speaking of things still to come, we've got a lot happening in the coming week, as we have in all of these coming weeks, really. But we've got a couple of semi-finals during the week. So Malta in the Malta Eurovision Song Contest have their two semi-finals on Tuesday and Thursday. We have an artist announcement coming on Tuesday from Azerbaijan, which is pretty early in the season for them to announce the artist. Not getting the song yet. That will probably come a bit later. We're getting the Danish artist and songs being released this week. And then we move into the various national finals. So on Friday, we have another Euro song, but this time it is the Irish Euro song. So it's a specific Eurovision edition of the Late Late Show on Friday evening. And then on Saturday, another Super Saturday beckons. Now this time we continue with semi-finals. So we have the second semi-final for Sweden, Melfest. We also have another Lithuanian one, and we get the first of the Icelandic semi-finals. But on top of that, we have quite a number of national finals. So we have Ukraine with Vidbir. We have Finland, much anticipated Finnish national final from UMK. Latvia, who had their semi-final last week, they have the final of Supernova. And finally, Malta, they conclude as well on Saturday with the Malta Eurovision Song Contest. So that will be 5 more songs at least that we have coming up in the next week. So all very exciting. And on top of all of that, and this is probably more relevant to UK viewers. I think UK viewers tend to be more of my viewers up anyway. But London Eurovision Party, the long-running big Eurovision pre-Eurovision event, it's been running for the last 15-16 years. The tickets go on sale on noon on Thursday, so tense moments for myself and my various friends as we try and get tickets for that, as I'm sure we will attempt to do so. But who knows? Come back and find out next week anyway. But yes, have a lovely week, whatever you're up to. Enjoy all the Eurovision shows if you can. And we'll see you next week with another update. Take care for now.